So I wanted to talk to Debi and Pete together. Debi Prickette is the Director of Decision Support and Sales Analytics at Emerson. Thanks for being here.
Happy to be here.
So Debi led a project that we recently did with Emerson. Pete is a vice president at Holden Advisors and leads many of our projects and project teams. So also thank you, Pete. This is like Debi is the special guest. Pete is also the special guest. So we're going to talk together about this project. The headline of the project is a transition to a software first model. So I thought, given both of your roles in this endeavor, let's chat together. We'll look at best practices, pitfalls, and how this kind of thing can go. And we'll see where we can get.
Sounds great.
Love it.
All right. So my thought was, let's start with Debi, and you can just give us a bit of the lay of the land of the beginning of this project. What was the impetus? I would imagine most people know what Emerson is, but that might be helpful in the context of what you were dealing with at the time, and just tell us a bit about the beginning of the project.
Sure, love it. So I work with Emerson. I specifically work with our process systems and software division, which is our control automation business unit, and I've been with it as a implementer. I've been in many different roles. I really invested in what we're doing here with the product, and really think it's a special product for the market. The impetus kind of started, well, it started a little bit before the COVID crisis. We were starting to see more and more of the technologies, embedded technologies that we use in our solutions, being more software defined. The value that we were getting out of our own products and products development was coming from this software defined structure. And so we started making some internal moves to be more software forward in our solutions, even before the COVID crisis. But as we all know, that COVID crisis just did crazy things to everybody's business. And for us, it accelerated our move to a more virtual environment, being able to deliver our solutions, products, and services in a more digital experience. So it really pushed a software first solution forward so that we could meet the needs of our customers, the needs of our sales force in that time frame. And we were very fortunate that we were not perfectly positioned to do that, but with minor adjustments, we were able to pivot to what the market needed at that time. And so as the world started to emerge from that and became more adjusted to the changes that were going to be permanent as a result of that crisis, then we started to look at more of a formal business model change within our business to really embrace that delivery of value through software, and what we needed to do internally and externally to be able to do that successfully. So that's kind of our origin story, and that's how we got started with this.
So perhaps the next place to go is just broadly, and maybe you can talk a bit about this, Pete. Why would a company do a project like this? You've got the software first model in terms of flexibility. I mean, I'll let you talk, but it seems like there could be a number of things that this would serve.
Yeah, and then the first thing I was going to say, Debi, I feel like for Emerson, the other cool thing about it, it's like Emerson's the company that makes the stuff that makes the stuff. So people talk about B2B2C, you're like B2B2B. It's like you're the whole machine, all the machinery behind the curtain that helps drive all of the things you don't expect, like between the automation and then the control software, the controllers themselves, all of that cool stuff. I think exactly what Debi said, why do companies think about these software transitions? It's like these old world industrial companies sometimes end up realizing that there's a desire in the marketplace for, like you mentioned, a little bit more customer driven self-service motion. So there's sort of the as a service transition, that people always talk about, like the Michelin tires by the mile, or the jet engine, GE engines by the hour. So there's these new consumption models that kind of are a little bit more you could say price model driven or commercial model driven, but really when you think about this in industrial automation, it's very much how do we deliver the capability or allow customers to try new things in more of a self-service motion. And I think that's kind of the transition that Emerson sees himself going through. And it's an interesting dynamic for Emerson because sometimes you could imagine that in, energy, some of their verticals, there's these refinery plants that exist for decades. This infrastructure is kind of built and then it stays there for a really long time. And yeah, you have to maintain all the equipment there, but sometimes those are kind of a horizon of just decades. And so it's not so much that there's immediate needs for lots of new capability in those industries. Sometimes, and it's just like, hey, give us a lot of capacity and that's all we need. Whereas you can think about some of these really cutting edge technologies and like personalized medicine and pharmaceuticals. That's like, let's make something for Pete specifically. And you're making really small batches. It's high technology. It's very specialized. And there's, sometimes the companies doing that are like these innovative startups in biomedical engineering, and they're not ready to like invest in the large scale production. They're like, we need to figure this thing out. And so we need to sample something in a way we're not yet ready to commit to building an entire factory, but we need to build a pilot lab. And so there's these different use cases where you could think about buying little bits and pieces of whether it's equipment, solutions, services, software, that there's real needs, and that kind of customer driven demand is what then goes upstream, and the companies that deliver it traditionally are like, oh, we got to think of new ways to meet the market where it's moving. And so that's the impetus for a lot of these projects.
Yeah, Pete, you're spot on. In historically, our go-to-market strategy, we've always been working with customers in a very capital intensive phase of their business, and you make that investment decision, and it's a very long-term, long life cycle, extremely sticky approach. And now things have really changed. While we still have customers that choose to operate in that manner, and that's great. Because that's the familiar ground. We do have these customers now that are asking us to adjust to their business model changes and to be the partner that they're looking for. And so we needed to be able to add that flexibility, that dynamic nature of adjusting our delivery to what the customer is asking for now. So yeah, that's absolutely spot on.
So maybe we talk a bit about the beginning of like how you approach the project, kind of getting this thing going.
It was perfect from the start. We did everything right.
Emerson's such a long-standing company. You've got so many things that have worked well for so long. So it's such a big change for a company like Emerson. How did you get this started? Can you just talk a little bit about kind of the early days?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So how did we get this started? One of the things I love about working at Emerson is they've given me so many unique challenges in my career. And this has definitely been one of those unique challenges. It's, uncharted ground. It is never been done before, a big requiring us to bring together the many subject matter experts within the organization, bring all of their knowledge together and figure out what needed to change. So what I loved about this is given the opportunity, and they actually came to the strategic pricing group. They came to us because of the view that we have across the organization, understanding the value to customers, understanding the sales force and their motion and how they communicate that value and tie to value, and how the inner workings of our organization. How do we actually execute and deliver this through the business? So I think, we see so much in this in this role that I think we were uniquely suited to do this transformation project. And we were able to assemble a team from the strategic pricing group, some really strong, sharp folks that wanted to get involved in this, this challenge. And yeah, there was no script, there was no playbook initially. We needed to start working together, doing small steps, going to our coaches and mentors in the organization, trying to get guidance from it, putting plans together, trying a couple of things. And some of the instructions that we were given in the beginning was, the recognition that there wasn't a particular script to follow. And so we were given permission to fail fast, like get out there, try a few things, get the feedback, and quickly learn from that. Well, the most important thing that we learned was we needed help. we needed help. We worked on it for a couple of months together to try to shape it and try things, but we realized that we needed a partner very quickly from this. And I have had the pleasure of working with Holden Advisors several times through my career. So I knew you guys were the right partner to come with us on this journey, because it was very ambiguous. So I knew that our relationship was going to be critical in this, because we already had that established, and we could go through these periods of discovery together. So that's, we gave it a shot. We were assigned to the project. We tried to put some of the pieces together, but pretty quickly learned that to really be successful, we needed an expert partner in this. So thank you for being that expert partner.
Well, thanks for the opportunity. Yeah, it's interesting because in these projects, you could envision other software transitions, like, or at least CapEx to OpEx transitions. Think about a company like Adobe, and Photoshop, and they kind of had a transition that went 100% perpetual license, sort of from a software perspective, to completely subscription based over a relatively quick period of time. But that was a 100%, change for everybody on a certain, effectively a day, but very short period of time. Whereas Emerson has so many different components of the business. So it's not a decree. This is an option. Certain customer segments are asking for this. Certain products are more prone, make more sense to align with that sort of model. And so there was this whole element of thinking about, really, for lack of a better word, segmentation. Like, what is the value? What do customers really need? Who are the customer segments and groups that are looking for something that's a little bit more flexible, a little bit more tech forward, and identifying what those products might be, what those customers are. And it's not like there's a transactional business that just there's millions of transactions happening in a day. By that I mean sales. It's like, hey, we have some new innovation, new innovative capabilities here. So we need to actually do a little more qualitative research to understand, like, all right, well, which are the segments of customer sets that need, for that example of the personalized medicine versus, maybe an oil refinery. So there's kind of different appetites for who's ready for sort of a different software first approach and a new delivery method. So that was really the first part of the project, is like swimming through that uncertainty to kind of structure a research, a value research project and market research project to investigate where we need to even focus to say, let's make this thing work for the customers that care about it.
Yeah, so that sanity that you brought to the process, like, okay, we're going to put some structure around it. We're going to look at it in these logical units, these chunks, and then we're going to, have that plan. That was the first bit of, like I said, sanity that we brought to the product. It's like, okay, now we've got a little bit of structure. We've got a prioritization. Instead of it being this overwhelming objective, now we've got it into units and into things that we can start to put our arms around, and we can start to schedule out and say, okay, this is phase one. Okay, these are the things we want to accomplish, and this is the relative time frame that we think will, we're not going to be, it's not going to be like, it was very fast. We didn't like go through and get to the where we were like, oh, we're comfortable that everything, every single thing is ready to go. We were like, nope, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to put it out there, and we're going to keep moving from that. So that's kind of how we got started with the project, is getting that structured, getting that put together, grouped, prioritized, and away we go. So
can you talk a bit about, and maybe this is one where Pete, you can talk a bit high level, and then Debbie, you can talk about how it looked for Emerson, the value part of the project, which I'm assuming was either part of that first phase or shortly after, how that all works.
Yeah, it's right up front. And so typically these go, one of two ways. If you have like a long tail of small customers that are already using existing products, you can kind of use survey methodologies to get a large N and kind of get insights across like a big set of customers in the market, and get insights that are sort of around what you understand, sorry, to be the important drivers of what they need and their decision process. Whereas in something that's a little bit more innovative, like what Emerson went through with this software transition to make it available to the market, you had to first kind of understand, all right, well, not every customer is going to need the same thing. What are the things they care about? And so that was much more qualitatively oriented, where you want to actually have real conversations with customers that say, all right, well, what are the things important to you? What would, this transition towards a software subscription offering mean to you? In some cases, they say, oh, we actually don't need that at all. In other cases, they say, yeah, well, this isn't the OpEx is how we fund our business. We need actually to have that opportunity for us to test out some of the things we're developing. So when you learn those differences in the market, then you can kind of say, all right, well, which of the solutions or products we should bring forward? Some of them might be already in the pipeline. Other ones we need to identify and say, hey, on our product roadmap, we should bring those things up. And it kind of gives you the lay of the land of what's important before you even get to a commercial conversation or thinking about it. You have to think, what are the capabilities we effectively want to develop for who? So it's a little bit broader thinking before you get to that narrower portion of the project towards the end.
yeah, one of the biggest changes in value that we had to embrace was in the change of the business model. Like I said, previously, all of our initial selling was done very much up front in a very capital intensive way, very competitive, very capital intensive. And so you're selling everything about your product from the beginning. And you were trying to establish that near-term and long-term value proposition right up front to some people that didn't care about the long-term value proposition or didn't care about the short-term value proposition, but that was your chance. That was when you were in there, and there was minimal adjustment to that over time. Some adjustment, don't get me wrong, but the infrastructure was basically set from that very initial thing. Now transition your thought process to a software-based subscription model, where what we're learning now is that you can grow your value over time. You have many more points. Once you land your product, then you have the adoption phase, the expansion phase, and the renewal phase. All of these phases were something we didn't have to worry. Well, we didn't think about it in the same way. So we had to teach ourselves a different way to think about those particular milestones that the customer goes through, and then how can we better match our value to when they need that. And then through a subscription, it gives you a better opportunity to adjust your commercial model, right? So you can now match the value to what phase that the customer is in, and be much more adaptive or responsive to those conditions. So it's a really big change, and it requires so much to embrace that change. Sometimes it's a product adjustments to embrace that change. Sometimes it's the delivery function, the execution function. We had to go through each of our products and look at it from that lens, as opposed to the way we had been looking at our products. So that was a big change, Tracy, as you ask about, you know, how do we connect to value on this? We really had to rethink that pretty substantially.
And Debbie, it strikes me. So think about this from a perspective of like an everyday product, like insurance that we all buy. Like in the old world way, you'd be kind of buying that insurance up front with the capital projects group, right? And you're like, all right, will my operators need this type of functionality? You know, maybe their voice isn't in the room today, but maybe I should think about them. How likely is it they need it? Whereas now it's like, oh, you know what? Now that we're 5, 10 years down the road and we're kind of in the operations and renewal phase and maintenance, like there's some capabilities that I've identified that I need and weren't really a glimmer of and a hope or prayer back, 5, 10 years ago. But now there's the opportunity to say, hey, we need this. Let's add it to the mix. And you kind of de-risk the uncertainty effectively of that upfront purchase. So you can kind of say, hey, yeah, we need this. We need it now. There's value here, and we can elect to utilize and partner with Emerson on this specific, smaller software.
Mm-hmm.
Really
Yeah.
flexible on that.
Right. So that tie to value now is constant delivery of value is one of the mantras that we embraced through the project, which is challenging ourselves in all that we were doing. Is are we setting ourselves up for the constant delivery of value? And
yeah. It's almost like as if you could buy the car insurance right after you get the fender bender and have it covered. Whereas like now you have the opportunity with this software first model to be like, hey, we need this. Let's just buy it now. Great.
Great. And then, it becomes incumbent upon us to prove that value. So, we also now have a longer role and responsibility in the customer's journey, in their value journey, is that we're there. Not that we weren't before, but now just it takes on a little different tone and tenor that we're there through the whole journey to make sure that we're accelerating their experiences, that they're achieving the value that they're really looking for, not more, not less, that we're guiding them more towards things that would be of greater value for them. There's just a lot of differences now that have become opportunities for us to help the customer in different ways. And we're still on a journey. We're just honestly in the beginning parts of this transformation. So I think it's going to take quite a bit of time, but we're really going to be able to do different things internally and with our customers, and that's exciting.
It's very exciting. I think it would be good to cover some of the wins. It could be early wins. It could be like kind of along the way, but what were some of the pivotal moments in the project phases that kind of had you say, all right, we've reached a milestone, or this kind of changed the game? Talk a little bit about those.
I would say, getting that structure and confidence, that order of battle put together was one of the first wins, because we had to go through some forming, storming, norming kind of phases to get that alignment, to figure out, internally that we needed to kind of change our connection with value because the model changed. So as a result, I think a couple of the quick wins was putting together this communication tool. We created a transition framework that had do first, do next, do later, flow to it, and all of these different elements to it. Is rather elaborate. We collaborated together in bringing, Holden and your experience and your wisdom and guidance, like this is what you need to be doing. And then we would come in with our vocabulary and our, business and processes. And then together we kind of created this, okay, this is how we're going to do it. Which became one of the most important, you said first wins, a communication tool to use throughout the organization, to all of the people that are going to be impacted by this change. We now had the very first communication tool that I think was a very important point. Pete, what do you think about that?
Well, I think that that's spot on, because these transition and transformation projects, it ends up being really a change management enterprise is what it is. Because it's not just a core project team that needs to get locked in a room for a few months, do the smart thinking, and come out and say ta-da. It's there's probably 50 folks internally that we were dealing with on a consistent basis. It's not, it's product teams, it's operations and engineering and marketing, and then sales. And we have to message all of this internally so everyone gets on the same sheet of music that says, hey, yeah, this transition's happening. Here's the why. Here's who it's for. Here are the products involved. By the way, here we need to talk to customers about it too. They've been asking for it, but we need to say, here's how this works. Here are the options available. And I also think that's extra important for Emerson, just because of the way not only longstanding customer relationships, but even the go-to-market motion in North America. You have these very longstanding partners that have chosen to partner with Emerson and represent them as an organization that pushed them into the marketplace. So it's almost these independent businesses that need to understand how they run their business and manage their customers to some degree. Oh, I see what Emerson's doing. Here's what it's going to do for
Right.
our customers. Here how we can offer it. So there's so many elements of change that go into that. Once you even have a determination about what you're going to move forward with from an offering perspective, it's just getting everyone on, singing the same sheet of music.
Which I think really lends itself nicely to the second big win that we had, which was the formation of something we called the Consistency Council. So for those of you that know us, that you're probably chuckling a little bit, because you've been asking for this for a really long time, to have a lot of more commercial consistency in what we're doing. So we hear you, totally understand that. But we recognize that through the large breadth of our portfolio, if every product or every product line was going through this transition differently and somehow determined that they wanted to go to market slightly differently than the next, chaos, right? Chaos for our customers, chaos for our sales channel, chaos operationally. So I'd say the followed very closely, the next big win was the formation of this thing we called the Consistency Council, which looked at the most critical commercial policies and decisions that needed to be standardized across the organization for the benefit of everyone involved, and to try to simplify this transition period, because you could start to build some level of understanding. Oh, I understand each product transitioning is going to have similar behaviors. We're not going to have to ask, well, what's nuanced differently about this product or that product. So that was also a really critical piece. And we started that council. We made like 15 really critical, our first batch of decisions, and we were so excited about that. And we start to roll those into the project and out to the organization. And then, just opens up Pandora's box, because we get all these, okay, now what about this? What about this? How are we supposed to interpret this? And so we just keep going back and enriching those decisions, clarifying those decisions, taking them from a decision to something that's procedural or actionable. So that's been really big. And now we're also looking at, well, what's our next batch of most important decisions that need to be made? And we're taking it even beyond software and subscription to the whole organization, because it really does benefit everybody what we're doing there. So that's two for you, Tracy, two big wins.
Great. That's great. You're also making me think, so as you're walking through all the different groups of people, there's like the first thing that stands out to me as something you would really have to deal with is the sales force. And there's so many, to your point, product marketing, there's so many different things, but particularly with sales and changing so much of that process. You can't force them to take this on, obviously. So what was your approach with that part of the business?
You're absolutely right. Love, love, love the Salesforce, and they are not shy, right? They are the best barometer of okay, this makes sense. I'm comfortable with this. I see how this is good for my customer. I see that how this is good for me, and I feel comfortable going forward. Or no, 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 we're not ready yet. So they are great at letting you know if your story is ready. And sometimes you have to push them and say, again, fail fast. It may not be perfect. Give it a try and give us the feedback from it. But yeah, so Salesforce, what did we do? We created we called them our software champs, and we recruited a couple of key salespeople from each of our world area regions to act as counselors for us. We brought them inside. We told them things we were thinking about. We told them things that we had decided, and we were trying to get gauge their reaction. Some of the things they said, nope, that's not going to work, and we're like, fine. We stopped it, and we said, okay, let's rework that. Some of them, we pushed forward with, but anyway, we started with this champs group, and we still meet actually on a semi-regular basis to bring them in to really tell them everything that we're thinking and why we're thinking, and get them to push back and say, this doesn't make sense, or this won't, this works for this customer segment, but not this other customer segment, or what about this? Have you considered this? So really bringing them in to be a critical part of the process. I think that's been really, really great. And they are very honest.
You want that friction internally so that the
Yeah.
customer doesn't feel it, right? So it's such a good part of it. What were you gonna
Yeah,
say?
it's truly a best practice because you do all the homework ahead of time and you nail down the theory and you say, all right, here's the hypothesis about this, the customers who are going to really love this, why, which product that's going to be, but then where the rubber meets the road, now it's application time. And if you don't have that continuous feedback mechanism, you really risk just having some things have total wins and some things fall flat and you don't know the why behind it. And you're like, well,
Right.
shoot, I was wrong, but why? And when you have that continuous feedback loop, then you really can course correct in real time. And that's the key. So in any product launch like this, you really need that continual feedback and those touch points with the field. It's key. And world areas, by the way, not just segments and customers, but culturally, there's just different ways the organization, like Emerson, goes to market, other companies go to market. There's different norms in the way companies do conduct business. So you just have to keep your finger on that pulse.
And I recognize I don't have a problem. I'm wrong all the time. Let's just, I am wrong all the time. And I love the feedback, and getting that, and the whole team really embrace that notion of how could we possibly know everything? I mean, that's absurd. So get in there, explain what we're trying to do, and absorb that feedback. And then really, the thing is, you have to interpret the feedback, and take as much of it as you can that matches with the objectives of the project, and then let them know that we're listening, we're incorporating that, and then we're moving forward. But yeah, you can't go into this. I never once went into this thinking I knew what to do, or knew the right answers. It's always being ready to make adjustments.
You could
And
learn.
yeah, and we got to keep continuing that way.
Yeah. Can you talk a bit about where things stand now?
Yeah. So we have wrapped up the first part of this transition. So we concluded that a couple of months ago, and so we now have our playbooks and our our order of battle, and what we're trying to do. So our fiscal year ended at the end of September. So that was one of our milestones. We wanted to have converted our first batch of products by the end of September. And we did. I think maybe minus one product. We got all of our initial targeted products converted to subscription, and so that was a huge win. Again, not perfect, but we're out there and we're learning and taking that feedback. And then now we have, for this fiscal year, we have the kind of the remainder of the portfolio that we plan to transition. And then we're working on that. And now we're starting to launch new products in this way. So that's another layer. It's not just transitioning some of our previous products, but now also introducing new products in the same manner. So big success there in getting that, meeting those initial targets. We continue with the change in that, the organizational change to embrace more of like the customer success manager role, elevating that within our organization, making sure that we are there through the entire journey with the customers to help them with that delivery of value. So really focusing on that. Identifying more of those value landmarks or milestones in the products to make sure that we're maximizing that value or building in, more value into the products. That is getting incorporated into our development roadmaps and to the release of new products. And then now we're starting to do the KPI tracking. So we're actually to the point now where, Pete, you and your team, gave us kind of these are probably the most important KPIs you want to be focused on, and, getting that institutionalized. So being able to collect that data, in some cases, being able to interpret the data, because, what's it telling us? What do we need to do differently with it? But so we've just for about 3 or 4 months or so, we've started to get that KPI data, and we're looking at it, we're like, move, move, but it's there, and so I love data. Data doesn't lie, so you gotta look at it, embrace it, and now that's going to be driving what we do next.
Well, yeah, and give yourself some credit. I think it's so important in these types of transformational projects to have a core group that's really driving things from a very consistent perspective. I think, people say hearts and minds, but I think I like the Heath brothers behavioral economics analogy of like the elephant and the rider, kind of like the rider being the logical brain of there's these customers that want this, and there's the use case, and here's what the products are, and then there's kind of like the elephant, sort of the emotional component of, oh, but change is hard, and this is kind of a different way to go to market for us with this subset of products, and you have to be very consistent to change the emotional and kind of acceptance aspect that's internally and externally. So there needs to be this very consistent voice, and that's why it was so important to set things up the way we did. And so, just kudos to your team for getting all these product launches out to be available for customers. And I think it's an exciting time. It'll be really fun to watch this play out.
And I would really be remiss. I mean, I'm here with you all today, but it was absolutely a team. And our steering committee could not have done it without Drew Palazzo, Randy Ballantyne, just absolutely phenomenal. Love to go to battle with those guys at any time. And then the development of our steerco, and then the larger group, and then the larger group, and the larger group. I mean, there's so many people involved, and I'm really proud to represent them here and to tell our story. But they really deserve all of the credit. So it was great. And Pete, you and your team, phenomenal work. I love working with you guys. You guys know that, and can't wait for the next opportunity to, find the next big hairy monster for us to go tackle together.
Exactly. What's next? It's so great. I mean, I think between there's so many different parts to how you approached it, to the things that you were surprised to find, the things that you knew you were going to find, everywhere in between. I feel like there's so many different parts to this project that people can learn from, and I appreciate you kind of popping the hood and letting us take a look at you too, Pete.
Oh, it's fun. It's fun, and we're still doing it. So
Yeah,
Thanks for joining us, Debbie. Good
Yeah.
idea, Tracy.
we appreciate it.
yeah, it's great talking to you all.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.